mind-blowing stats that will make you rich.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Here's what I think is so awesome. This is why I'm so excited about this show. Every now and then, there are little nuggets of information that we can take and we can archive and kind of put in the back of our memory banks. And when we find ourselves somewhere in a conversation, talking with friends, at a cocktail party, whatever, you come back up with that statistic. And we were talking, hey, what are some of those things? What are some of those little soundbite snippets that exist in the financial world that would just be fantastic for us to let our listeners know about?
Yeah, I want you to absorb what we're about to share with these 10 facts and figures. Memorize them, because what they do is they support the fundamentals that create wealth. Look, guys, I've shared with you, we've done shows on the 3 primary components of wealth creation, which is discipline. That discipline leads to the margin of saving money, which is number 2. And then, of course, giving it enough time for those assets to grow. Well, then if you go even deeper into those 3 components, we get into the concept of deferred gratification. Yep. Then you hear people all over Twitter sphere, live on less than you make. You see it modeled in books, avoiding debt. All of these things are interconnected with these understanding statistics that give this the depth, the glue that holds this all together.
All right, so without further ado, let's jump in. We're going to talk about 10 stats that we think, from a financial standpoint, are going to blow your mind. The first one is going to blow your mind, and it's going to do so, I think, in a negative way. 60% of Americans right now cannot come up with $1,000 for an emergency.
So the stat to remember here is the 60%, because you can pretty much, it's like, the bus schedule, when the trains come to town, about 6 out of 10 people are just going to struggle with the basics of even having $1,000 in their pocket.
Yeah, this number, even in 2021, the most recent, actually turned out to be 61%. I think about how devastating that is, because it's not hard to have an $1,000 emergency. It's not hard for something to happen with your car, or to have a medical bill, or to have something go wrong at your house. And if you need to come up with that money and you do not have it there, your only resource, your only way to come up with that is to go borrow money, is to go ask someone to help, or to run it up on a credit card. That is not the place that you want to be if you want to be on sound financial footing.
Look, liquidity, cash, I know the whole saying. We even did, there's a TikTok thing where it says cash is trash. That is so easy to say, but realize your cash and liquidity is the oxygen you breathe for your finances, meaning that we all take it for granted until you're actually out of it, and then you realize how powerful it is. And what I don't like about when you don't have cash, you make horrible, desperate decisions when you get into these type of things. Small little things like your car not working anymore, hot water heater going out. Those type of small little things can make you jump into horrible decisions like credit card debt, or even going to a payday loan place. Don't get yourself in that situation.
So if you want the takeaway, if you want to keep your life out of the ditch, make sure that you have at least $1,000. Make sure that you have an emergency fund, emergency reserves in place. And if you want to know a tool that can help you make sure you're staying out of the ditch, go out to moneyguide.com/resources, and you can find the financial order of operations deliverable. This is completely free. It will walk you through the 9 tried and true steps of how to build wealth. And number 1, in most circumstances, will get you past this horrible statistic of 60% of Americans not being able to come up with $1,000.
And that leads to number 2. Because if people can't come up with $1,000, they probably are going to fall prey to number 2, which is 47% of Americans actually carry a credit card balance.
So if you're listening to this in the car, or you're walking down the street, you're not alone right now, or maybe you're at the office and you're sitting next to someone, you kind of look to the left and look to the right. One of those 2 people is likely carrying a credit card balance, if it's not you that's carrying a credit card balance. And I find that just absolutely mind-blowing.
That's what I was about to say. I think that's a third.
No, I was saying
but if
one
you look,
out of 2,
if there's
left
2
or
of you and 1 of you, but the point is well made, is that I am shocked. This is not credit card usage, because we have no problem with credit card usage, but we're absolutely against credit card debt. And I'm sad to know approximately half of Americans are carrying a balance. And even worse, we found out that average number is around $5,300. That's not, believe me, this is not skewed by the people that are paying it off monthly and they're just big spenders. This is actually what the balance is that people are carrying.
If you've listened to our show for any amount of time, you know we talk about how powerful compound interest can be, how it can be the wind in your sails carrying you towards wealth building. Well, it can either be your most beloved ally, or when it comes to credit card interest, it can be your fiercest adversary because it can cut the other way. It can actually work against you when it comes to wealth building. So we think credit card debt is no-go land. It should be a 4-letter word. It should be something you try to avoid at absolute all costs.
I mean, big perspective here. We get excited about if you can make 8 to 11% out of your investments. Average credit card debt is somewhere between 16 to 17% is the embedded interest rate. Guys, that's not working for you, so be careful. Number 3, this is a big one. It's not the latte effect, it's this effect. It's number 3 is new cars lose half of their value in the first 4 years.
So I think that's an interesting thing. I think if I would remember this statistic, every time I go to buy a new car, every time I go out on a lot and I see that shiny new sports car, that big fancy truck or whatever it is, as I'm looking at that, I should internalize immediately that whatever I'm going to pay for this thing today, it's going to be worth about half as much 4 years from now, 48 months from now. And if I thought about it that way, it would probably really inform the way I go about making my auto purchase decisions.
Well, that's not even the worst of it, because this is I had to choose the stat we were going to use on this because I really wanted to talk about how bad vehicles are, because it gets worse in the fact that 72 months is the average term people are doing on their car debt. So not only is your car depreciating like a rock, we have it on the visual graph there, because if you look first year, it's down to, what does that lose?
81%.
81%. So you're losing 19% in the first year, down to 69, then 58 as you're getting close to year 3.
Yep.
That is a rapid decline all the way to year 4. It's at 49%. Guys, if you extend that with debt that goes out 72 months or 6 years, you're not making it's already a dire situation that you're making even worse.
Yeah, what we decided is that if you are going to do a 72-month car loan, and mathematically, if you don't put at least 30% down on that car, you're going to be underwater on that car for roughly the first 2 years that you own it. Meaning, if something were to happen, you were to get in an accident, it were to be totaled, there's a good chance that you will actually owe more on that car than the check you will get from the insurance company to total that. You just don't ever want to find yourself underwater. So make sure when you approach car purchases, you're doing it the right way.
So here's the key takeaway on that. We have a system, we have an understanding with vehicles. They're necessary. We have to get from point A to point B to usually work, or just to get the necessities. So we recommend 23/8, meaning you're going to put down 20% on your vehicle at a minimum.
Yep.
You're not going to finance for anything longer than 3 years, and you're going to ensure that your car payments do not exceed 8% of your gross income. But here's what I also like. Guys, don't use 23/8 and then distort it and think, it's okay because I can afford to do this monthly, because there's another caveat. You have to make sure your monthly investments exceed what your monthly car payment. I don't want to hear somebody who has $1,000 car payment and only putting $300 in their investments. You're doing it all wrong. You're not maximizing your army of dollars. I would rather you have $1,000 going towards the investment and turn that upside down and have a $300 car payment, because that's the money that's going to create financial independence.
Now, I know a lot of you are saying right now, yeah, but man, that sports car, it looks awesome, or that fancy new truck is just going to be fantastic. Keep this in mind when you make consumption decisions, especially when it comes to automobiles. It is much better to actually be wealthy than to look wealthy.
Yeah.
And I feel like we live in a society where so much emphasis is placed on looking wealthy. People are taking out 72-month car loans, buying more automobile than they can afford, and getting themselves in a horrible financial situation.
So we didn't have this, and I'm mad that we didn't put it in the show notes now, but it's Sir Richard Branson just did the first billionaire space flight, and they posted a picture with him and Elon on the same day of the launch. And Elon is barefooted
disheveled
and disheveled. I mean, I think he might have woken up from Richard's whatever couch they had that he was sleeping on that night, it proves the point that being wealthy is better than just looking wealthy, and so make sure you get that priority right.
All right, here is mind-blowing statistic number 4. The average savings rate in America is only, and I use the word only, 8.5% right now.
And by the way, that's up. That's because pandemic right now, the money, it's actually increased because we've been locked down and so forth. It's typically around 7%. So we are failing miserably at saving a portion of our income, and that's not good. And but look at our stat that we have here on personal savings rates. You can see that the pandemic caused all kind of distortions, but traditionally, it's just right above 6 or 7%. There is a little distortion. This is how nerdy we are. When we see charts, we go, why in the world did it go up in 2013? Tax rates were going to go up, so there's a lot of income accelerated. But overall, it's easy to see the takeaway. 6 to 7% is the average or median savings rate. And guys, that's not good enough. That's not the guidance we give if you're going to build financial independence. But let them know, what is the numbers of what we think is success.
Well, traditionally, you used to hear, way back when, they say, hey, if you can save 10% of your gross income, you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. Well, when that 10% of gross income number was thrown out, pensions were still a thing. There were still companies that would pay you a guaranteed sum of money for your entire retirement, and you were going to have Social Security that was for sure going to be there back then. Now the game has changed a little bit. The onus for saving for retirement now rests on us, the individual participants. So saving 10%, we don't think anymore will get the job done. We think if you want to be saving what you're supposed to be saving, building for true financial independence where you can do what you want, when you want, the way that you want, your goal should be to be saving 20 to 25% of your gross monthly income.
So we actually did, being numbers nerds once again, we decided, hey, if you are saving 25% or by age, what should you be saving? We have some research that we've been able to compile.
So here's the case study we said. We said, okay, if we just assume a 6% annual rate of return, very, very conservative, and we assume that your wages increase at about 1.5% a year, so roughly half of what a normal inflation rate is, and we assume that you want to retire at age 65, replacing 80% of your pre-retirement income, how much would you have to save? And this is what we found. For a 20-year-old, if you can start at 20, you only have to save about 12% of your gross income to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. Now, if you do what the Money Guy Show says and you save 25%, by the time you get to 65, you can actually get a pay raise in retirement. You can live off of 167% of what your pre-retirement wages were.
Or maybe you even get to retire a little sooner than 65. There's nothing wrong with getting a little ahead of the game. But I think a lot of folks don't start at 20, Bo. They probably start after they graduate college around 25. What does that do to the numbers?
Yeah, at 25, if you want to have that same level of retirement, instead of only having to save 12%, now you got to save 15% of your gross income in order to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. But again, if you can figure out early on how to be a financial mutant that saves 25%, when you get to retirement, when you get to age 65, again, you can have a pay raise. You can actually replace 131% of your pre-retirement income, or just like you said, you could retire a little bit earlier.
So we've seen 20-year-olds 12%, 25, 15. Where in the world's 25 coming to 20 to 25? We can see it has to do with 30 and 35-year-olds.
Yep, absolutely. So if you wait until 30, that's when 20% no longer becomes the goal. I'd argue it pretty much becomes a necessity. If you want to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income, then you need to save 20% of your gross income starting at age 30. If you wait until 35 to start doing this, then you have to be saving 26% only to replace 80%. So the earlier you figure this out, the earlier you can recognize you need to be a financial mutant, the more comfortable for a retirement you're going to set yourself up for, and the earlier you'll be able to achieve financial independence.
So I wanted to transition, because to go ahead and pull 40, you see 34% savings, 58. I want to move on and talk about another thing that I think is going on in America right now, which is we have turned education potentially into a negative thing for the younger generation. And a lot of that's through student loan debt. And we actually were in a meeting yesterday where we were talking about how much should you let your children participate in their education to feel like they have skin in the process, to actually take ownership and responsibility. And I was talking about how I think this epidemic of student loan debt is giving the younger generation a sense of hopelessness. And I think there's another element of this that we need to focus on, and that's number 5, which is 27% of Americans work in their field of study. This is a problem.
So I want to say that again. So roughly over 1 in 4 folks actually end up doing the thing that they went to go get an education in. The thing they said, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to go get a degree and I'm going to go pursue this field of study. Only 1 in 4 folks actually end up doing something in that field. That seems like a lot of inefficient use of time.
Well, that means, because that's the glass half full, the glass half empty perspective is 75% of people that are probably running up student loan debt are not even working in their field of study. That is a big, big problem. So here's what I want you to understand about this. When we have done our own research on our clients that are millionaires and successful, it's the exact opposite. We have found that 73% of our clients actually work in their field of study. So the point of this is not to make anybody uncomfortable or second guess, but it is if you have children in the house or if you're trying to figure out, maybe you're a person watching this while you're in college, measure twice, cut once, get the right major so you're not strapping yourself with debt that's not actually generating the dividends that you would expect, because that's a big, big problem.
I thought this was interesting, Brian. In 2019, or the graduating class of 2019, 69% of students, so 7 out of 10 students, ended up taking out student loans to get through college, and they graduated with an average of $30,000 of student loan debt. That means these folks that have freshly minted, they have a degree, they're coming out of the workforce, and rather than starting at 0 and being able to begin their wealth building journey, they are starting at negative $30,000. They have to make up that much before they even get to 0 to start building towards positive wealth accumulation.
And look, student loan debt is not something brand new to this generation. It's just that I think the size of it is what is brand new or modified. It was not uncommon for friends and peers to come out of college with $10,000 of student loan debt. But now I think we're getting to the point where it might be at or larger than your first year's salary. That's when it's detrimental. And that's why we do give the guidelines of, if you are going to have student loan debt, try to ensure that it's less than the projected income for that first year graduate in that field of profession.
Now, so if you are going to go to school to study something, or perhaps you have a teenager who's thinking about going to pursue a college major or going to pursue a specific vocation, if we recognize that 27% of folks aren't actually, or 75% of folks aren't actually using their major, then maybe we should make some better decisions about the majors that we're choosing. And so we ought to think about, what major should we pursue? And if we're going to go accumulate college debt, what are some of the best majors that will allow us to pay that back? And what are some of the worst majors that are going to make it difficult to pay back student loan debt?
I call this, this is truth in education. Just like you have truth in lending, where you have to sign all these loan documents before you take down a loan. They ought to do this with college majors. I've heard other people talk about this as well. And that's why, don't make us the bad person on this for sharing this, but we did go pull the research, not our research we went and found, but there are sites that compile what are the majors that have the hardest time of paying back student loan debt. And here it is on the screen. And like I said, this is not us editorializing. We found a source for this. But we have found that drama and theater, it's a struggle. Health and physical education, civilization, ethnic studies, composition, speech, fine arts, nutrition, and fitness. I'm sorry, Bo. I know you like to get that flex on.
That one hits
but
close
it
to
is
home.
a harder thing to pay back your debts or to make good incomes with some of these majors.
Now, don't mishear us. What we are not suggesting here is, hey, don't go pursue drama and theater. Don't go pursue civilization. Don't go pursue fine arts. However, if you are going to move into those vocations, you may want to make a very serious decision into what type of school you're going to go to and how much student loan debt you will accumulate trying to achieve that degree. If you can still go get that degree without racking up the debt, well, then it's easy to pay back the debt because you don't have any. Just know that if you're going to go into one of these vocations, the amount of student loan debt you acquire may not justify the degree that you're going to achieve.
Well, I don't like to do anything where we just give the negative.
Sure.
Because that's very glass half empty. Let's give what are the best majors if you actually want to have great earning potential, great career opportunity. And there's not a lot of surprises on here. Look at this. I mean, I can practically hear Willie Nelson singing this in a country song, but we got engineering, nursing, operations and logistics, computer science, finance, the wonderful world of finance, economics, construction, services, special needs education, and accounting and actuarial science.
What part of Willie Nelson? Where did Willie Nelson come from?
It says, "Mama, don't let your babies grow to be cowboys. Let them be doctors and lawyers." And such.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
Now, reality is, doctors and lawyers didn't make that. But if I could rewrite, "Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys," we would have put engineering, economics, and the wonderful world of finance.
So this isn't what we're not saying this. If you want to go be an engineer, don't think that the money guys just signed off and said, "Hey, go get as much student loan debt as you can possibly get to go get an engineering degree." However, if you are going to choose that vocation, you have a higher propensity to pay off the student loan debt required to get that degree. But there's nothing wrong with still trying to keep that reined in. Remember, our rule of thumb is, whenever you go to get student loans, you really don't want to graduate with more than you anticipate earning in your first year working. So if you're going to come out of school making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, you don't want to have more than $50,000 to $60,000 of student loan debt.
That leads to number 6. It takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. This one, guys, what I love about personal finance is that it rewards those that are patient, diligent, and willing to do the work that others aren't willing to do. And that is the way life works too. A lot of careers and other things, it's easy when you look at somebody who's doing well and go, "Man, that looks awesome." But what I think sometimes gets left out of that analysis when you're looking at somebody that's doing well is, what did it take to get that? And a lot of times it is an investment in building mastery of a skill.
Yeah, I think so often we get caught up in viewing the results that someone has. We may see an influencer or a personality or a musician or an athlete, and we see where they are now. We say, "Oh, well, so-and-so, they went straight to the major leagues or straight to professional status right out of high school. They did it at 22 years old, or they did it at 18. Why can't I do it?" What you might not see is that they might have started doing whatever it was they were doing at 4 years old, or they might have been doing it for a while. Don't just look at the results where someone is now without knowing their full story, where they came from. And I would imagine in most cases you're going to find folks who've had extreme success, no matter if it's athletics or if it's hairdressing or if it's whatever the vocation, to really become an expert in that. I would imagine in most circumstances, they've put the time in, they've paid their dues, and they've acquired that 10,000 hours of mastery.
Well, I also think about the grind. I mean, I look back, I came out of college making $28,000 a year as a staff accountant. I had friends that didn't go to college at all that were in sales and other things smoking me.
Sure.
And that's just the grind that it is when you come out in some of these professions. Now, look, accountants make more out of college, but still, in relationship of where they potentially could make in the long term, they're paying brand new college graduates a lot less than they will make in 10 years of being an expert.
Yep.
It's because there's a grind of learning, getting your reps in, getting your at-bats to build mastery, to build the knowledge. And I tell you this, here's why I think that the 10,000 hours is important to understand, is that I don't want you to be in a profession that's somewhat of a grind and you're in year 2, 3, or 4, and you think about giving up after you've already put the time in, you've laid the foundation, you've gotten the education, you've made it through all the different gatekeepers and obstacles that make this profession great in the long term. Stick with it, or at least give it time to see if it gets better. And that's why I put that in, because I know in this instant gratification society we live in, that might sound old man on the porchish, but I can tell you, coming from a profession that rewards skill, knowledge, and expertise of giving the time to develop it, this does work out. Same thing works with doctors. Same thing works in a lot of fields. I would say it even works in social media.
Sure.
Go listen to the first original Money Guy show in 2006.
It's very different.
Fast forward now, we just talked about we're going to celebrate our 10,000th hour or 5-year mark on YouTube in the not too distant future. all of that has to go with this concept.
You know, and I think so often 10,000 hours gets focused on the beginning of a career or the beginning of a skill set. I think it really happens oftentimes throughout big changes in life. Perhaps you're someone who's thinking about leaving the workforce, entering into retirement. Just like it took you 10,000 hours to become an expert in your vocational field, you may want to spend 4 to 5 years figuring out what it looks like to be retired, figuring out how you transition that, figuring out how you can even master that life transition. So anytime you're going to pursue something, put the time in to make sure that you're an expert at doing that thing that you're going to do.
Number 7 is very popular. I talk about this one all the time. A lot of you out there in the Money Guy family, you've heard me say this before, but I think it is so worth repeating because it is counter to what the narrative we hear in so many places right now. But number 7 is 80% of millionaires are first generation.
Now, what I love about this statistic, Brian, is it's sort of freeing, right? It was because I did not come from wealth. I came from very humble beginnings. I know you are the same. And when I hear that 80% of millionaires are first generation, I hear, man, this is attainable. In the place in which we live, anyone has the opportunity to work hard, put the time in, figure out the 3 components of wealth building, and anyone can be a millionaire. I think that's an incredibly encouraging thing.
Well, I like it because it is motivating. You too can do this. But a lot of people might be looking at this and go, yeah, but is that a stat that you pulled from The Millionaire Next Door?
Sure.
And that book was written in the mid-90s, so maybe this is not timeless. I'm telling you, this is timeless because we've actually seen the research on this. And think about this, guys. In the next Millionaire Next Door, which Dr. Sarah, who's Thomas Stanley's daughter, continued his research on, she published in 1892, they found in their research, 84% of millionaires were first generation. Fast forward to 1996, I've already told you, the Millionaire Next Door came out with the 80% stat. And then you've got Ramsey Solutions has come out in 2019. It was 79%. And we even do our own wealth study of our own personal, millionaire clients at Abound Wealth. And the stat came in at 77%. That is too much to call it a coincidence that all these different sources say first generation, people did not come from money. They kind of started building and saving. And that's the other part that's not on this stat. I know it from my own research. The majority of these are not entrepreneurs. The majority of these are not big tech executives. The majority of these are not the virtuosos that are on the basketball court or the football field or playing an instrument. The majority of these people we're talking about are diligent savers just like you.
Now, what I think is so interesting is this statistic about 80% of millionaires are first generation was incredibly motivating to me early on and got me so excited about how level the playing field was and how we'd have the ability to end up getting there. But now, as I've had some success in life and as we've had some success in business, there is a dark side to that. There is a negative to that. And for the statistic to be true for hundreds of years here, that 80% of millionaires are first generation, that must mean that wealth disappears quickly. And this is what we know, that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation. And then by the third generation, 90% of wealth is wiped out.
It's a natural cleansing process that happens. And this is why, guys, if you come from a family of wealthy parents, please change this stat. Don't, if you are successful and you're raising children, pay attention to these stats too, because guys, I want us to change this because I think it's the saddest thing out there. Because what if instead of these people consuming the wealth that was created before them, they use this for the better good, that they used it for generosity, that they used it to grow something that got bigger and bigger? Because success doesn't mean you took from someone else. Success means that you actually grew the pie out bigger.
Yep.
And that's the part that bothers me about this generation, the whole generation loss of wealth between second and third, is that, man, there's just the opportunity cost is bad. So that's why here's the challenge for you. Ask yourself, am I a wealth creator or a wealth consumer? And I think if you'll look at it in that type of mindset, it will help you with that decision-making process, especially if you come from a family of means. Because if you find that you're consuming the wealth, rethink that.
You should change the cycle. All right, so this next statistic, Brian, I think this one I think this one allows us to take some pressure off. Because again, we live in this social media world where we see the fancy cars and the big houses and the young people with the fancy watches and the fancy clothes. I thought that this was sobering, but sobering in a comforting way, that most people don't become millionaires until age 49.
This is the stat that actually created this show. Because I was driving home and I was just thinking, I mean, my brain works in weird ways, but I was like, man, I just wish more people knew that the typical millionaire hit that at age 49, and there's so much to unpack from that number of 49, is because when do people graduate college? They graduate college around 22. Mm-hmm. That the difference between 22 and 49 is approximately 27 years of investing. When I look at the power of compounding growth, it's not the first 5 years of investing. It's not the first 10 years. It's after that money has had the time of staying and percolating and growing. It's after 20, 25 years that you start seeing that compounding growth. It's like a magical formula. Like when you're making a cake, when you put the eggs, you put the butter, you put the flour, it smells good, and you put the sugar. Don't forget the sugar. It tastes good, but something about when you put it in the oven and then watch it rise, and then there's something from a chemical standpoint that is going on. The same thing happens with money. If you can get those components of, if you think about discipline, money, and time all together, it makes that big, beautiful financial cake that you can smell. It permeates your entire life, and it just makes you happier and more fulfilled too.
One, you just made me incredibly hungry. And two, I agree. But don't just take our word for it. Don't just take our word, that 49 is the average. Look at the actual numbers. We had FTED pull this together for us. I want to show you the power of time. What happens if I invest $500 a month over different lengths of time? And why do we pick $500 a month? That's just maxed out a Roth IRA right now, $6,000 a year. And this is what we thought was so interesting. If you do that for 5 years, at the end of that 5-year period, about 18% of your ending value would be growth.
It doesn't visually. We have a chart up right now for all of our podcast listeners. You don't even see the growth because it's just not as big enough portion of it.
If you were to do this for 10 years, at the end of the 10-year period, about 34% of your ending portfolio value is growth.
I'm starting my eyes. Remember, I'm getting those eyes of a 50-year-old that are starting to go away. So it's I can barely see the sliver of growth. But that's not even telling the full story.
If you do this for 20 years,
there it is.
59% of your total portfolio value is for growth. 59% of the value of your army of dollar bills is not from soldiers that you put in the army. It's from recruits that those soldiers went out and grabbed. It's from your army of dollar bills growing.
So here's what I think is so interesting, because it's easy after you, especially somebody who's in their 20s who starts doing this. After you're going to look back in 5 years and go, is this worth it? I feel like I'm sacrificing a portion of today. Am I really getting something out of this? And then you fast forward 5 years, and now you're 10 years of being a saver and investor, and you're like, okay, I see a little bit, but I just don't know. This doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm putting more in than I'm getting harder, out of it. So maybe I should be living more for the day. And believe me, there's enough voices out there in the marketplace that are telling you that. But if you can just keep putting it in, keep letting it do its magical thing, at year 20, you can see 59% of the account value, more than you put in, is actually from the growth, not from you saving and investing. And then it gets even bigger, because look at that. 30 years in, now of your total account value, 76% is growth. You're only putting in 25% or 24% of the total account value. And then what happens at 40, Bo?
At 40, and let's assume this is an entire working career, 40 years you've been in the workforce. If all you did was just do the $500 a month for that 40 years, at the end of that 40-year period, 86% of the account value would be growth. 86% would be money that was created while you were sleeping, while your army of dollar bills was working for you. It's unbelievable if you can just give it time to do what compounding interest does.
So somebody who is living their best life ever in retirement, there's a potential that the only part they had to do was put that 14% in
14%,
early
yep.
enough and get the habit of saving. And that's the part that makes it so sad, is that people don't give it the time. They don't let it happen. And that leads to number 9, which is the sad stat for me, which is retiring Americans have only saved $172,000.
Now, I recognize that, perhaps you worked for your whole career. Maybe you made $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. So $172,000 is a lot of money when you think about it sort of in absolute terms. That's not a small sum of money. However, when you think about a retirement portfolio and you think about the level of income that might be able to generate for you for the next 20, 25, 30, 35 years, you may be surprised to find out $172,000 does not go quite that far.
Well, I have a theory. I think a lot of when people get to retirement, that $172,000, I bet a large portion of that is employer contributions to your retirement plan. I think there's a lot of individuals out there that are not taking an active role in creating financial independence, but they have an employer who set up a matching account in their 401k, and then you fast forward and it's $172,000 because maybe when they were in their 20s, the employer contributions plus what the 3% they were required to put in plus the employer equals that $172,000. That's what happens. But guys, that's not good enough. And that's, you have to make a proactive. And I can already hear the naysayers are like, yeah, but you're discounting the fact that people just don't make a lot of money.
Sure.
Remember what led me to this path of doing this for a living was an economics teacher in high school sharing $100 a month would make me a millionaire. And he was wrong because it was like 75 to 80 bucks a month when I was in high school. It's like, it's $100 for a 22 or 23-year-old. So guys, don't blow this opportunity. You just have to get the discipline to start saving it and early as often as possible so that your wealth can actually grow and be created.
The most valuable money you will ever save, the most valuable money you will ever invest in your entire life is going to be the earliest money you invest, the first dollars that you put to work for you. So the sooner you can figure this out, the sooner you can start on your wealth building journey, the sooner you're going to set yourself up for long-term success. People ask us all the time, hey, when should I start investing? And we always have the exact same answer. The absolute best time to start investing was yesterday, which means that today, by default, would be the second best time to start investing. So get it figured out, start now, and start building towards that beautiful future.
And that leads to the closing point. Number 10, $1. And look, there's a reason it's on a koozie. There's a reason it's in company names, F-Structure, because I am just fascinated with this concept that it permeates a lot of my life, is $1 can grow to $88 if you just start investing early enough. And remember, this concept 88 times over comes from that a 20-year-old, every dollar that a 20-year-old has the potential to become $88 at retirement if they just let that money go to work and started investing it. And then you compare that to somebody like myself. I'm 47 years of age right now. I'm not on that chart, but I know it off heart, and our deliverable is worth about $3, meaning that $1 has the potential to turn into $3 by the time I retire at 65. That is completely different than the 20-year-old that can turn it into $88. And this is why I always tell young people who don't come from resources, when you look at somebody older than you and you say, man, I wish I had what they had, you can. You can actually have more likely. Because if you look at somebody like a 20-year-old looking at my life, they could say, man, I want what Brian has. But then you think about the fact that my money can only triple from the time that I have it right now to when I retire. A 20-year-old can turn it 88 times over.
Unbelievable.
You can do a lot with a little. So that's why you don't have a huge income. You don't have to make, the Elon Musk or Bill Gates money. You just have to have the discipline. Put something to work. Put $50 a month. Put something to work, and I think you'll be shocked at what that will turn into.
If you want to know how powerful your dollars are specifically, we have a deliverable out on our website. You can go to moneyguy.com/resources, and we actually show you two things. We show you how powerful your dollar is at every age. So you mentioned, Brian, for a 20-year-old, $1 can turn into 88. For a 40-year-old, $1 can turn into $7. But we also wanted to show you, if you're starting at zero How much do you have to save on a monthly basis to hit millionaire status by 65? So take this deliverable, go to moneyguide.com/resources, download this deliverable, use this, let this be motivation so you can start building your army of dollar bills as soon as possible.
So I hope all these stats, because we try to give you headline stats to get your brain, because that's what I want you to kind of waken something up inside your head that says, oh, wow, it is amazing how all this is interconnected. I just need to keep motivated and keep focused. Use these statistics, use this data as the grounding point to stay out of debt, to kind of give my money time to work, stay on, no matter what's going on through volatile periods, meaning if the economy goes bad in the next 2 to 3 years, don't lose focus. Actually get excited about that. That volatility, the downturns, that's going to be great for you. You will be rewarded if you're consistent, create a good behavior, and understand the power of your army of dollar bills. Always respect discipline, the ability to build money, and then give it time to nurture and grow into that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. You will be rewarded for all of that. And that's why we love creating content, is two guys that don't come from resources. We both come from I'm from lower middle class.
Sure.
I know you come from really struggling
Poverty,
situations, poverty, and you can do this. Don't let somebody tell you it's not possible. I'm telling you, we live in a period of time where technology's made it where access to investments is easier than ever. So easy that we've actually totally blown it up and screwed it up with all the Reddit boards and everything else. But it doesn't. But it is from the abundance of saving and building. There is not a better time. And then, guys, get excited about how innovation is accelerating. We're in a period of accelerating innovation, returns, and other things. You can capitalize on that and get really opportunistic to make sure that you build that wealth that you so much deserve, and you can create the best version of yourself if you just put your mind to it and start doing the activities and the behaviors that create wealth.
And if you need a team to help you on that way, we want you to remember we're the guys that planted the seed. As your army of dollar bills grow, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and maybe you don't have the time to navigate it yourself, or maybe the size of the decisions is uncomfortable, maybe you just don't know what you don't know, we want you to remember the abundance cycle. We want you to learn, grow, and apply so that then you can come back.
Learn, apply, grow till you reach a level of success. Keep going. I know.
I want you to learn, apply, and grow until you reach a level of success. You say, I don't want to go this alone. I want some co-pilots to come alongside. We hope you'll remember the Money Guy team. We hope you remember the team at Abound Wealth. And we'd love to be a part of your financial journey.
Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Make sure you subscribe and go check out. We have a brand new TikTok channel. We keep meaning to say that at the front. We wait and reward those at the end of the shows, but we'll figure it out at some point. You know, it's not like we just started this whole social media thing yesterday, but here it is. Go check us out on YouTube, podcasting, TikTok, wherever you get your social media. We are likely there. Instagram. Yep. I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting, but you can always go to home base, which is moneyguy.com. But we're going to keep creating content. We just are so thankful that you give us this opportunity. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team, out.